Picture this. He says something designed to unsettle you, a comparison to his ex, a subtle dig at your choices, a strategic silence. Most women feel their chest tighten, their mind race to respond, to defend, to prove. But you? You smile slightly, take a sip of your wine, and remain completely, devastatingly unmoved. This isn't coldness, this is Stoic detachment, and it's the most powerful relationship strategy you've never been taught. You know that feeling, don't you? That desperate internal scramble when someone pushes your buttons. Your heart races, your mind screams at you to say something, fix it, make them see your worth. You've been conditioned your entire life to believe that immediate emotional response equals authenticity, that reacting proves you care, that expressing every feeling makes you a genuine woman. Society has sold you a beautiful lie, that your emotions are your power. But what if I told you that for 2,000 years, the most powerful minds in history understood the opposite? That your composure, not your emotional display, is where your real power lives. Let me introduce you to a man who knew more about freedom than almost anyone who's ever lived. His name was Epictetus, and he was born a slave in ancient Rome. Not metaphorically oppressed, not culturally constrained, literally enslaved, his body owned by another human being, his leg permanently disabled by his master's cruelty. He had every reason to be angry, reactive, emotionally destroyed by his circumstances. Yet this man, who couldn't control where he lived, what he ate, or even his own physical freedom, became one of the most influential philosophers in human history. Emperors and senators traveled across the Roman Empire to study with him. And his secret? He mastered the one thing no one could take from him, his internal response to external events. Epictetus discovered that while he couldn't control his chains, he could control whether those chains touched his soul. He developed a practice of detachment so powerful that he became freer in slavery than his masters were in their palaces. And here's what matters to you: the invisible chains women carry in modern relationships, the need for approval, the fear of abandonment, the compulsion to manage everyone else's emotions, can be broken using the exact same ancient wisdom. Think about the exhausting emotional labor you perform daily. You monitor his mood. You adjust your behavior based on his reactions. You carry the weight of keeping the relationship harmonious. You've become so skilled at reading emotional atmospheres that you can detect a shift in his energy before he even speaks. This isn't a superpower. It's a survival mechanism you developed because you were taught that women are responsible for emotional maintenance. But Epictetus would look at this pattern and ask you one devastating question. Why are you trying to control things that aren't yours to control? But here's what no one tells you about detachment and why most women get it dangerously wrong. They confuse detachment with dissociation, with building walls, with becoming cold and unavailable. They think detachment means caring less, loving less, being less. That's not what this is. True Stoic detachment isn't about numbing yourself or protecting your heart behind iron gates. It's about sovereignty. It's about recognizing that your peace, your worth, your internal state, these belong to you and you alone. No one can touch them without your permission. Detachment isn't about caring less. It's about being controlled less. And that distinction is about to change everything for you. Let me show you exactly how your emotional reactivity is being weaponized against you, and how men and manipulators have been reading the same playbook for centuries. Here's the first scenario you'll recognize immediately: the strategic silence. He stops responding to your texts. Hours pass. Your mind starts running scenarios. Did I say something wrong? Is he with someone else? Is he losing interest? You feel that familiar anxiety building in your chest. Finally, you send another message, then another. By the time he casually responds with, "Sorry, been busy," you've already handed him complete control of your emotional state. He didn't have to do anything except withdraw attention, and you performed exactly as expected. Every time you react immediately to his provocation, you're handing him your remote control. He presses a button, you perform. The second manipulation tactic is even more insidious: the comparison. He mentions how his ex handled something differently, how his colleague doesn't get emotional about these things, how other women seem more easygoing. It's not even a direct criticism, just a carefully placed observation designed to make you question yourself. Most women immediately feel the need to defend, to prove they're better, to modify their behavior. You find yourself explaining, justifying, shrinking yourself to fit the mold he's casually suggested. You don't even realize you've already lost the game by playing it. Then there's emotional baiting, when he says something deliberately provocative, then watches your reaction with that slight smirk. He knows exactly which topics trigger you: your family dynamics, your career ambitions, your past relationships. He drops these conversational grenades not because he wants to resolve anything, but because your emotional response gives him data about your vulnerabilities and confirms his position of power. The moment you engage with heightened emotion, you've proven you can be controlled. Now let's talk about what this pattern costs you beyond the relationship itself. Research from the American Psychological Association confirms what you already feel in your body. Women perform significantly more emotional labor than men in both personal and professional contexts, constantly monitoring, managing, and adjusting to others' emotional states. This isn't just exhausting, it's systematically undermining your decision-making capacity. When you're in a state of emotional reactivity, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for strategic thinking and executive function, literally goes offline. You're making critical life decisions from your amygdala, your fear center, not your wisdom center. Here's the professional double bind you're living in. Notice how you can maintain perfect composure in a board meeting, negotiate confidently with demanding clients, and handle workplace conflict with diplomatic precision. But the moment you're in your intimate relationship, that composure evaporates. That's not because you lack the skill. It's because you've been conditioned to believe that emotional reactivity in romantic relationships proves you care. That if you don't immediately respond to every emotional provocation, you're cold, unavailable, not invested enough. Society taught you that your emotions prove your love, but what it actually proves is that your boundaries are penetrable. The internal cost of this pattern is devastating. You lie awake, replaying conversations, wondering if you overreacted or underreacted. You feel shame after emotional outbursts, promising yourself you'll stay calm next time. You experience decision paralysis because you can't separate your anxiety from your intuition. You've created an exhausting cycle: react, regret, ruminate, repeat. The most successful women I know share one trait. They've mastered the pause between stimulus and response. They've recognized that the space between what happens to them and how they respond is where their power lives. Let me be clear about something crucial. Your emotional responsiveness isn't a personality flaw or a weakness. It's conditioning. From childhood, you were taught that good girls are accommodating, that caring women are responsive, that feminine energy means being emotionally available at all times. You learn to read rooms, anticipate needs, adjust your behavior to maintain harmony. These are sophisticated skills, but they've been weaponized against you. The same sensitivity that makes you empathetic and intuitive has been exploited to keep you reactive and controllable. Here's what sophisticated women understand that most don't. Every moment you spend trying to control his feelings, manage his reactions, or prevent his disappointment is a moment you're violating a fundamental principle the ancient Stoics identified 2,000 years ago. You're attempting to control what isn't yours to control. And that violation costs you everything: your peace, your power, your presence.
Epictetus lived in actual chains, yet he was freer than the emperor who could have killed him. let me show you how a disabled slave became the most powerful mind in Rome and what that means for your relationships. Epictetus was born around 50 AD in Hierapolis, in what's now Turkey, into a life where he owned nothing, not even his own body. He was sold as a slave to Epictetus, a wealthy freedman who served in Emperor Nero's court in Rome. And if being enslaved wasn't constraint enough, his master's cruelty left him permanently disabled, his leg damaged so severely that he walked with a limp for the rest of his life. Most people facing these circumstances would understandably become bitter, reactive, consumed by their powerlessness. But Epictetus did something radical. He recognized that while his master owned his body, no one could touch his mind without his permission. He began studying Stoic philosophy under Musonius Rufus, one of Rome's great philosophical teachers, and discovered a truth that would eventually make him more influential than the emperors who ruled. You cannot control external events, other people's choices, your circumstances, or even your own body, but you have absolute sovereignty over your internal responses, your judgments, and your mental state. This distinction, which the Stoics called the dichotomy of control, became the foundation of everything he taught. And here's why this matters to you. Epictetus couldn't control his legal status, his physical condition, or his daily circumstances. Yet he controlled the only thing that actually mattered: his mind. You can't control if he texts back, but you can control whether his silence disturbs your peace. After gaining his freedom, Epictetus established a philosophical school in Nicopolis, Greece, and something extraordinary happened. Students traveled from across the Roman Empire to sit at the feet of this former slave with a disabled body and listen to wisdom that would change their lives. Among his teachings was a revolutionary idea captured in his most famous statement: "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views they take of them." Read that again. You're not upset because he didn't call. You're upset because of the meaning you've assigned to his not calling. The event itself is neutral. Your interpretation is what creates your suffering. When Marcus Aurelius, who would become the most powerful man in the world as Emperor of Rome, needed philosophical guidance, whose teachings did he turn to? Epictetus, a former slave. The emperor's personal journal, which we now call Meditations, is filled with Stoic principles he learned from Epictetus's work. Think about that power dynamic for a moment. The man who commanded armies and ruled an empire considered himself a student of a man who once had no legal rights at all. Why? Because Epictetus possessed something more valuable than political power. He had mastered internal freedom. His students compiled his teachings into a text called the Enchiridion, which means handbook or manual. Not a theoretical treatise, not abstract philosophy for intellectual debate, a practical handbook for daily life. And at its core is that fundamental question: is this within my control or not? If it's not within your control, Epictetus taught, it doesn't deserve your emotional energy. Your partner's mood, not in your control. Whether he commits, not in your control. His past relationships, his emotional availability, his life choices, none of it is in your control. What is in your control? Your standards, your boundaries, your responses, your interpretation of events, and most importantly, whether you allow external circumstances to disturb your inner peace. Here's the parallel I need you to see. Epictetus lived in physical chains, but achieved complete psychological freedom. You live without physical chains, yet you're bound by invisible ones. The need for his approval, the fear of his rejection, the compulsion to control his feelings about you. He was enslaved by Roman law. You're enslaved by cultural conditioning that taught you your worth depends on male validation, that your emotions prove your investment, that managing his feelings is your responsibility. If he could break physical chains through mental discipline, you can break emotional chains the same way. The Stoics developed specific practices for this freedom, techniques for examining your automatic reactions, for distinguishing between what's yours to control and what isn't, for building what they called the inner citadel, a fortress of self-possession that external events cannot penetrate. These aren't abstract concepts. They're practical tools that transformed slaves into philosophers and can transform you into someone completely unshakable who walks into any relationship dynamic with complete sovereignty over your own peace.
Here's the framework that makes you unshakable, not because you don't care, but because you've reorganized what you care about. This is the exact system Epictetus taught, now applied to the modern relationship landscape. Let's start with the foundation, the dichotomy of control. This is the most powerful sorting mechanism you'll ever learn. Take out a piece of paper right now, actually do this, and draw a line down the middle. On the left side, write, mine to control. On the right side, write, not mine to control. Now let's sort your current relationship anxieties. His interest level? Right column. Whether he texts back? Right column. His commitment timeline? Right column. His feelings about you? Right column. His past relationships, his emotional availability, his life choices, his opinions, all right column. Now the left column. Your standards, your boundaries, your responses, your interpretation of events, your decision to stay or leave, your emotional state, your self-respect, your choices. This is your domain of power. Here's what most women do. They pour 90% of their energy into the right column, trying desperately to control things that aren't theirs to control, while neglecting the left column entirely, the only place where they actually have power. You've been trying to control his feelings about you. Let me ask you what Epictetus would ask. Have you ever, in your entire life, successfully controlled another person's internal emotional experience? Have you ever made someone feel something they didn't naturally feel? No? Then why are you investing your peace, your sleep, your mental energy trying to do the impossible? The moment you stop trying to control what's in the right column and redirect that energy to the left column, to your own mind, standards, and responses, everything shifts. You've just reclaimed your power. The second technique is what I call the pause practice, and it's based on a simple neurological reality. When something triggering happens, he doesn't text back, he says something dismissive, he pulls away, your amygdala, your brain's fear center, fires immediately. It's trying to protect you from perceived threat. Your heart races, anxiety floods your system, and you feel an overwhelming urge to react right now. But here's what sophisticated women understand. Between his text and your response, there's a gap. And in that gap lives your freedom. 3 breaths. That's all you need. Breathe in for 4 counts, hold for 4, exhale for 4. This simple act does something neurologically profound. It activates your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for executive function, rational thought, and strategic decision-making. You're literally shifting from reactive brain to responsive brain. Let me give you a specific scenario. He sends a message that would normally trigger you. I need space to figure things out. Your automatic response pattern? Panic. Send multiple messages asking what you did wrong. Try to fix it immediately. New pattern with the pause. Read message. Notice the chest tightness. Don't touch your phone. 3 breaths. Walk away for 5 minutes. Now your prefrontal cortex is online. You can respond from power instead of panic. Of course, take the time you need. Then you go back to your life. The pause isn't avoidance, it's creating space between stimulus and response. That space is where Epictetus found his freedom in chains, and it's where you'll find yours. The third technique is reframing impressions, and this is where Epictetus's genius really shines. He taught that events themselves are neutral, they're just things that happen. But the moment something happens, your mind creates what he called an impression, an automatic interpretation. He didn't text back. That's the neutral event. Your impression. He's not interested. I'm not enough. He's with someone else. I said something wrong. Notice what you've done. You've added an entire narrative to a simple fact. He didn't text back. Period. Everything else is your interpretation. Epictetus taught that you have a choice. You can consent to that automatic impression, or you can examine it and choose a different frame. Here's the reframe. He didn't text back. He's managing his own choices and schedule. I'm managing mine. His communication patterns say something about him, not about my worth. Same event, completely different emotional result. This isn't toxic positivity or denial. It's recognizing that meaning isn't inherent in events. It's assigned by you. And if you're assigning the meaning anyway, you might as well assign one that serves your peace rather than destroys it. Every time you catch yourself adding catastrophic meaning to neutral events, you're catching yourself in the act of creating your own suffering. That awareness is the beginning of freedom. The fourth technique might sound dark, but it's actually liberating. Negative visualization, or what the Stoics called premeditatio malorum. Here's how it works. Imagine the worst relationship outcome. He ends it. He chooses someone else. He never commits. Really feel it. Sit with that scenario for a moment. Now ask yourself, would I survive? And the answer is, yes, you would. You'd be sad, you'd grieve, but you'd rebuild. You've survived every difficult thing that's ever happened to you. Your survival rate is 100%. This practice isn't pessimism or catastrophizing, it's inoculation. When you've already mentally survived the worst outcome, it loses its power to terrorize you. He can't threaten you with something you've already made peace with. This is how you stop being held hostage by fear of loss. But here's the crucial distinction I need you to understand. This detachment practice is not dissociation. It's not building walls. It's not trauma response where you shut down emotionally to avoid pain. Healthy Stoic detachment means you remain fully present, fully capable of love and connection, but you've detached your inner peace from external outcomes. You can be deeply emotionally connected to someone while simultaneously being detached from whether they choose you. Those aren't contradictions. They're the mark of mature love. You're not responsible for managing his emotions, controlling his choices, or ensuring his happiness. That's his work. Your work is managing your own mind. The fifth and final technique is what Marcus Aurelius called building your inner citadel, a fortress of self-worth that external events cannot penetrate. This means constructing a self-concept so robust that his validation becomes nice but not necessary. Your worth isn't up for negotiation based on who texts back. It's not determined by who commits to you. It's not measured by relationship status. Epictetus taught that your worth is the one thing that's truly up to you, and that's his entire philosophy distilled. You decide you're valuable, and then you live accordingly. Daily practices for fortification: name 3 things that are within your control each morning. Journal on what you brought to today that was excellent, independent of anyone's recognition. Spend time in activities that remind you of your competence and strength. You understand the philosophy. Now let me show you exactly how to implement this starting today in your actual life.
Philosophy means nothing without practice. Here's your exact action plan to become unshakable, starting with just 5 minutes today. Epictetus didn't become unshakable overnight. Neither will you. But you can start the practice today, right now, with a simple 7-day protocol that builds your detachment muscle progressively. This isn't about perfection, it's about repetition. Think of this like learning meditation or training for a marathon. Your first attempts will feel awkward, unnatural, maybe even wrong. That's normal. You're rewiring decades of conditioning. Give yourself permission to be a beginner at this. Day 1 and 2, the dichotomy sorting exercise. Take 15 minutes and do a complete relationship inventory. Open your notes app or grab a journal and write 2 columns, mine to control and not mine to control. Now list everything causing you relationship anxiety right now. Be specific. Whether he texts back today, if he introduces me to his friends, his ex contacting him, his commitment timeline. Sort each item ruthlessly. If you cannot directly control it through your own choices and actions, it goes in the right column. What goes in the left column? Your standards, your responses, your boundaries, your decision to stay or walk away, your emotional state. Spend these 2 days just observing how much mental energy you've been pouring into the right column. Don't try to change anything yet. Just notice. Day 3 and 4, the pause practice. But here's the crucial part most women miss. Don't start with your most triggering relationship. That's like trying to run a marathon when you've never jogged. Start with low-stakes scenarios. Practice detachment with the coffee barista who gets your order wrong, with the colleague who sends passive-aggressive emails, with the friend who cancels plans last minute. In these situations, practice the 3-breath pause before responding. Notice your automatic reaction, breathe through it, then respond from your prefrontal cortex instead of your amygdala. Build the muscle with strangers and acquaintances before you take it into your intimate relationship. Day 5 and 6, Impression Reframing Journal. Each evening, answer these 3 Stoic reflection questions that Epictetus himself practiced. What was outside my control today that I tried to control? Where did I add unnecessary meaning to neutral events? What impression did I consent to that I should have examined? Be honest. Maybe you tried to control your partner's mood by being extra accommodating. Maybe you interpreted his quiet demeanor as rejection when he was just tired. Write it down. The awareness itself is the transformation. You're training your mind to catch itself in the act of creating suffering. Day 7, Full Integration. Today, you're bringing all the practices together in your actual relationship. When something triggering happens, and it will, you'll pause, sort it into the dichotomy, reframe the impression, and respond from your power instead of your panic. Your first attempt might be clumsy. You might pause and still react badly. That's fine. You're learning a new language. What matters is that you're practicing. Now, let's troubleshoot the obstacles that will come up, because they will. If this feels cold or unloving, you're confusing detachment with disconnection. Stoic detachment doesn't mean you love less, it means you're controlled less. You remain fully present and emotionally available, but your peace isn't held hostage by outcomes. If you're afraid that not being reactive will make him leave, then that fear is precisely the attachment that needs work. If he only stays because you're anxiously managing his emotions, do you even want that relationship? If this feels impossible, you're aiming too high too fast. Start with 10-second pauses, not complete emotional detachment. Progress is incremental. Here are the signs you're making progress. You notice the pause starting to happen naturally, without effort. Other people's moods and behaviors affect you less. You feel curiosity instead of panic when facing uncertainty. Your decision-making becomes clearer because it's not clouded by anxiety. You stop ruminating for hours after difficult conversations. These are your markers. Download a Notes app right now. Not tomorrow, right now. Tonight before bed, answer just one journaling prompt. That's implementation. That's you joining the small percentage of women who don't just consume philosophy, they embody it. The moment you catch yourself trying to control the uncontrollable, and you pause, and you redirect, that awareness is the progress. You're already becoming unshakable. You now have the ancient blueprint and the modern action plan. The question is, are you ready to join the 2% of women who actually implement this?
If you've watched this far, you're already in the 2%. Now, make it official. Comment below right now. What's one situation where you're going to practice Stoic detachment this week? Name it. Write it down. When you declare your intention publicly, you're not just engaging with content. You're joining a community of unshakable women who refuse to hand their remote control to anyone else. We're building something here. a movement of women who understand that ancient wisdom holds more power than modern dating advice ever could. If this resonated, subscribe and turn on notifications, because next week we're diving into Marcus Aurelius on feminine dignity and why apologizing less actually makes you more respected, not less loved. This is a series. Each philosopher builds on the last. You're collecting an arsenal of mental sovereignty. You have the philosophy. You have the practice. Now you have a choice. React like you always have, or respond like Epictetus taught. You already know which woman you want to be. Remember what Epictetus said, no one can hurt you without your consent. You've been giving that consent unconsciously for years. Today, you take it back. Not someday, not when you feel ready. Today, starting with the very next interaction that would normally trigger you. That's your test. That's where you prove to yourself that you're not the woman who hands her peace away anymore. You're the woman who keeps it, protects it, and builds an entire life around it. You're ready for this. Now go become unshakable.